All right, welcome everybody to our March Art Forum. We will have one more Art Forum lecture in April on the 5th with the glass artist William Haynes. And then, if you do not know me, my name is Haley Quick and I am an art professor at ESU. For those who are here for Art Forum, don't forget we have our sign-in sheet right here. If you want your participation credit for attending, you need to sign in and also attend the entire lecture. And then for any audience members who would like to ask questions, please wait till the end and there will be an opportunity to ask questions for our speaker today. And then, is there any other art program related announcements? Yes.
Hi everyone, I'm Kate Eisman, I'm the art history professor here. The Art History Association, we're a new group on campus and we're having our inaugural exhibition juried show. It is starting next week. It opens on Wednesday, March 6th, and please join us for the opening reception at 5 o'clock and come see some wonderful work done by ESU students as well as students outside of ESU as well. It's in King Hall, Wilson Gallery.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Derek Wilkinson. I teach painting and drawing over at ESU, and I'm really happy to be introducing Shaun Roberts. And we've all had the opportunity to see his paintings for the last couple months. It's been really nice to walk through there and see students going through and spending time with the work. But this is also a reminder, if you haven't been over to King Hall to see the exhibit, the closing reception is right after this, so please come down. And tonight's also the last night to see the work on display. All right, I'll say a little bit about Shaun. So Shaun Roberts received his BFA in painting from Stephen F. Austin State University in Nacogdoches, Texas in 2010, and earned his MFA in painting and drawing from the University of Washington in 2012. Upon graduation from the University of Washington, Shaun was awarded the Joan Mitchell Foundation grant for graduating MFA students. He was recently awarded a residency to work alongside painter Odd Nerdrum in Norway for over 2 months. Shaun is currently an associate professor of art at Stephen F. Austin State University, and he's the painting area coordinator. Shaun's been in several group and solo exhibitions spanning over 20 states, including the First Street Gallery in New York, the Art Museum of Southeast Texas, the Southern Mississippi Museum of Art, the Eastern Kentucky University Museum, and the Museum of East Texas, and the Gadsden Museum of Art, Alabama, and Emporia State University Epping Gallery. That we can add that to the list. And I want to also thank Shaun for doing a wonderful job of a workshop with our students earlier today. There were like 12 of us in attendance learning. We saw Shaun develop a self-portrait from a mirror and imagination, and turn that into a narrative, and then everyone else had a chance to start on painting, so that was a lot of fun. But okay, please give a warm welcome to Shaun Roberts.
Thank you all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks so much for having me here. It was a pleasure working with many of you today in the workshop, a lot of fun. I hope that I can see some of you in the exhibition later after the talk, and I can talk with you more. And as Derek said, I teach painting at SFA, and I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit more of my work and my influences with you guys. So let's start out a little bit about my background and where I come from. I grew up in a small working class environment, family in rural East Texas. We were hours away from many major cities, so there wasn't much else to do other than like painting, I mean not painting, but fishing, painting for me, but hunting or working in the garden, you know, sort of timeless ventures. As you can see here, my grandfather and my cousin holding a large fish that we caught on our trout lines. This is us in the garden. I'm the little baby on the guy's shoulders there. So they start us quite young in the family business. And this is my cousin. So this just gives you a scale of how big some of these fish were. There's a lot of lakes where I grew up. You know, people think about Texas and they just automatically think of desert, but it's such a huge place. There's different ecosystems, and where I live, it's more closely related to Louisiana, and that kind of swampy, piney woods kind of environment. Yeah, so we catch a couple of these, we could easily feed the whole family for a couple of weeks. And then this is my dad. So looking at this, you're probably thinking, like, how in the world did this guy become a painter or become interested in art at all? Well, there's much more to the story than meets the eye, because I also grew up in a family of performers and entertainers. My dad was a magician, and when I was younger, I was actually homeschooled for a couple of years because we were traveling so much doing magic shows, and in a way I got another kind of education. I had small parts in the magic shows, but the main job that I had was to help with the stage construction and sort of putting it up, taking it down from location to location, and I helped my dad build a lot of his illusions. So it was a lot of fun, and I didn't know at the time, but a lot of those skills I developed would become a part of my art making process later on, and I'll talk about that. But I'd always been interested in the visual arts, although I never really pursued it, because for some reason I had that idea in my head, which I think a lot of us grow up with, that you have to be naturally talented. You know, it's not, rather than a skill that you can develop and hone and work on. But my junior year of high school, I got bored in class because the teachers weren't teaching us anything, and you know, I just had a lot of free time, and I started trying to draw this tattoo that I had on my arm, and just by happenstance, it kind of looked a little bit like, you know, what I was trying to draw, and that just kind of opened up a passion in me, and all of a sudden, all I was doing was drawing, filling sketchbooks in my room all summer. I didn't go to the skate park or do anything. That was my life goal before painting, is I wanted to be a professional skateboarder, and, you know. But I come back in my senior year, and I hadn't taken any art classes yet, so I took some art classes, and luckily I had some teachers that took notice in me and saw my passion, and they took me to visit the local college, and I saw, ooh, this is something that I can pursue, and you mean take college classes and learn more? And so that really just kind of set me on the trajectory. I saw they had painting classes, figure drawing classes. I didn't even think about what a career would be like. I just wanted to find a way to learn more, and that's really the only thing I knew. So after I went to undergrad, I decided to go to graduate school and pursue this on a larger scale, and I went to the University of Washington in Seattle. The first year was a lot of fun. They had us do a lot of experimentation and try different work methods of working, different techniques, and but after that, you know, there was a big emphasis on how to develop a body of work, a thesis, thinking about sort of longer term goals. And I had a little bit of an artist block. I wasn't sure where to go or how to approach this. So I went home for a couple of weeks in the summer, and I visited the Almond Carter Museum of American Art, where I saw paintings like this Remington and some Russell paintings. And I was also reading some short stories from Flannery O'Connor. She's described as writing like this allegorical fiction about these deceptively backwards characters that question ethics and morality, always set in the rural South. And a lot of the characters in both the short stories and the paintings, they seem a little rough around the edges or even dangerous, but somehow likable. And that reminded me a lot of some of the characters I grew up around in East Texas, and some of them even my own family members. And so that just gave me a little bit of a starting point, like a seed to maybe start an idea that would grow out of that. And thinking about the first painting, I was also looking at cinema because I'm very influenced by that, and I think a lot of it is my entertainment background, you know, in the magic shows and sort of the settings. I would pause these films at a particular moment where something important was going to happen and just study how they set the lighting, how they set up the scene to sort of help tell the story. And I really like the wood planked walls and these kind of tacky decorations in this Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven. And I was looking at and liked the dusty kind of color palette in the Remington Apache's painting. And so I took those inspirations and decided to try to build my own set. And that's where the skills from the magic show start to come in. I got a lot of this wood donated from the wood shop on campus. I found a lot of the objects from junkyards and thrift shops, but I was trying to cater it in a way to where it would have that kind of dusty color palette, nothing too colorful or out of the ordinary there. And a few references I was looking at: Andy Warhol's Elvis 1 and 2, and Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver. I like the scene where the guy's playing with a gun in front of the mirror, but particularly the window behind him I found interesting, so I put that into my set. Also looking at Caravaggio's Boy Bitten by a Lizard and Tibor Cernus's Triple Self-Portrait. And there on the left, that's a bunch of thumbnail sketches. I would get in the set and try to just kind of envision what kind of character should exist in the space, and I would do a lot of really fast sketches to see what would work compositionally. And that's sort of part of the process. Even though for this series I'm using myself, I don't think of them as self-portraits. I feel like it's out of convenience, but also I'm an actor trying to become a specific character in a way. And then here's a value study. Next to the Caravaggio painting, you can really see the strong influence on the final pose there. I think the reason the Baroque era has such a strong impact on me is the drama, the lighting. It's very cinematic in a way, and so it resonated a lot with me. And a color study, thinking about and looking at a lot of Rubens and also Franz Hall's paintings. Particularly Franz Hall's, he has a lot of sort of inebriated characters who've had a few too many drinks, and they've got the red cheeks and these silly and goofy expressions. And I thought that might be a neat way to counteract the seriousness of the subject matter of the character having the pistol in the painting. And sometimes I think walking that line between pathos and humor can be even more unsettling in a way. And this is my studio setup, and just give you a sense of the scale and the working environment. I would have a mirror on the easel, and I'd be working back and forth there. And the final painting, this could be a drunk uncle goofing around, but also the gun's almost directly in our space in a trompe l'oeil kind of way, and it's very alarming and dangerous. And in a way, it's just over the top, and it starts to remind me of these old Western posters from the 1960s and 70s, the Euro Western, like Fistful of Dollars or El Topo. And I kind of like that idea, and I started thinking of a way to maybe create a triptych or a series of these with maybe different characters. And so I started thinking about different characters to develop, and I decided to pursue a musician theme. And a couple of films I was looking at just for lighting and stage sets, Scott Cooper's Crazy Heart and the Coen brothers' Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? But also, my dad, the magician, is also a musician, And so I traveled around to a lot of their gigs and took some pictures of their shows too. And I started to notice, a commonality in different elements like the lighting. And this is what I built and set up. There's these false walls with newspaper and chicken wire, and hubcaps, a hog skull, some neon lights, some instruments set up, and these sleazy kind of tacky posters. I kind of want to, I want the environment to be this sort of dive kind of hole in the wall place that, maybe it's a lot of fun, but it's dangerous, and, maybe it's a place that we shouldn't be. And I was looking at some different paintings for ideas of poses of musicians, and I really like the Sidney Mounts painting the banjo player, and particularly the way that his posturing is on the strumming hand on the banjo. And then with the Thomas Aikens painting Home Ranch, the way there's an energy and kind of rhythm created in the painting, how the figure's leaning back in the chair, you can almost feel the music. I thought that was really interesting. So I try to incorporate some of that in my own painting here. You can see I referenced the hand gestures from the Mount painting, but instead of leaning back, I have my figure actually leaning forward to the audience, sort of daring you to come in. And then for the final piece of that work, I knew I wanted to do some kind of carnival character to kind of reference my background. And I was looking at a lot of those old magician posters like Houdini, and but this Carlini poster really resonated with me. It gave an unsettling feeling, and I realized that a lot of that I think had to do with the color palette, but also the lighting from that underneath perspective. And also looking at the silent film by Robert Wine, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. He kept this creature he called a somnambulist in a box that claimed could predict the future, but it reminded me of the sword box illusion from the magic shows. And so I created my own version of that. I made this box and the swords using cardboard, spray paint, electrical tape, and I got this striped fabric and just sort of made a makeshift tent. I put dirt on the floor and set up these different colored lights. And then here's the painting. You'll see I changed the stripes from red to a cooler color because originally they were just too garish. They called your attention away from the drama of the painting. So since the lighting overall was this sort of green, coolish color, I changed them to blue, and that really helped the main drama be in the warms in the front. And then I put the tip of the sword almost at the edge of the canvas to kind of come into our space in a way kind of trompe-l'oeil, and in a way we feel trapped and crowded, like you're in a tent, and there's nowhere to go but through. The three together. And so when you're thinking of them as a triptych, it's not only important, the composition of each painting, but how they work together, rhythmically from one piece to the other. So you'll notice, and I was thinking about sort of the object and the hand gesture of each figure sort of follows like a pendulum or sort of momentum to kind of keep you moving through the whole. And this is a gallery view of the works, give you a sense of the scale. Another angle. And seeing them together and with the scale, it really gives me the impression of the movie posters, the advertisements, and so I was really happy with that aspect of the works. And then I first found out about the kitsch movement through one of my favorite living painters, Odd Nerdrum. And what the kitsch movement essentially is a group of painters who primarily focus on storytelling within their works, and they follow examples from Renaissance, Baroque masters, and also philosophy, and particularly like ancient Greece, to do with storytelling, thinking about archetypal images and timeless narratives. And so that made me become interested in reading some philosophies around storytelling from a few different angles. And I'm always excited to explore other philosophies and viewpoints on around storytelling, mythology. So if any of you have any suggestions for me later, I would love to hear. Aristotle really talks about poetry, but he references a lot of paintings from painters from his time. And in my opinion, poetry and painting are very interrelated, especially the way I work. I imagine it as a visual kind of poetry. And then Joseph Campbell, primarily I like how he examined different mythologies and sort of folk tales from different cultures, and how also dreams, and how the story is very interrelated in a kind of formula. He talks about the hero's journey. And then Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. It's another angle of storytelling, thinking about screenwriting, which is very interesting. What I found fascinating about this is the idea of a log line, to sort of summarize your whole script or your idea, your story, into 3 or 4 clear sentences to tell someone. And it's a way to sort of know if you have a strong narrative, a strong story, or you need to go back to the chalkboard. And so I kind of use that technique with my paintings in a way, sometimes to help me through whenever I'm struggling with narratives of my own. And although I talk about archetypes, timeless narratives, of course, whatever's going on in the world influences me and what I'm painting, what I'm working on. And at the time, now this is old news and feels very old, but especially with all that we've experienced and been going through as of late. But I remember making this next body of work, thinking every day that, are we going to be wiped out? Are we going to be, sent with a nuclear missile over here? Those feelings of anxiety that I'm sure we all experienced, but in a way that is a archetypal kind of idea. Humans have been fearful of the outside and destruction from the beginning of time, and we probably will until the last days, I would say. But thinking about that idea, looking at paintings, this portrait by Odd Nerdrum, a portrait of Cato Zaun Peterson, really examined the horrors of war on the body, but juxtaposed with almost like a sweet, delicate portrait, which was really moving to see. And then looking at Hieronymus Bosch, Angel Leading a Soul to Hell, sort of brought forth more of the ideas of the nightmare of that anxiety and what could happen. And then in my piece, I bring in a ram to help maybe make the painting a little bit more allegorical, where you can think about sort of, the god of war, Ares, represents the ram, and to a lot of different sources, but also Jason and the Argonauts and the search of the Golden Fleece, the dragon they encounter. So this flame in the background, it could be destruction from a mythical creature, it could be a modern sort of war, it could just be a city burning or a natural disaster. So this is where I start thinking about having these stories a little bit open-ended, in a way that you can bring your own experiences and interpretation to them and sort of participate in the painting and the stories yourself. And I like the idea of jumping off of these allegorical or mythological paintings as a starting place and sort of putting my spin and take on it. And I was looking at Rubens and some other painters' depiction of Prometheus. And in my painting, I replaced the eagle with a turkey vulture, a creature that's very common where I'm from. They're known to be more of a scavenger, so they only attack either weak, dying, or already dead sources. And my figure, instead of being chained to a rock, is a pile of scrap. Maybe this is apocalyptic boneyard or just an East Texas junkyard. But I also look at just paintings that I'm interested in and enjoy, the pose or an expression. Here, looking at Rembrandt's self-portrait at 34, it's pretty clear that he was looking back to Titian, man with a quilted sleeve, and I like that posture of the elbow. But both of these figures are very almost prideful and like about sort of their youth, their ambition, their talent. But I take that and sort of put this more pitiful figure, this elderly man who's maybe had some bad luck or is living in a rough time. His sweater has holes in it. He's in this sort of dilapidated structure. Out the window there's this marsh or seascape, and I put this coin in his hand, which could represent the allegory of life, the gamble of life, or the coin that we pay the ferryman on the river Styx. And I wanted to make a companion piece to this one. I was looking at Rubens' Portrait of a Woman, and I really like how he has a nice sense of posture of hand gestures and how that can help tell a story and sort of inform and move the viewer around the picture. Also Goya's prints, some of these depicting sort of the elderly type figures. And then in this piece here, we have this desolate background with a lone figure and this cast shadow, this strange greenish kind of glow, this light. Maybe it's a street light from night, or maybe this is some kind of encampment, a trailer park, or a prison camp even. This figure looks like she's had a rough time of it. She's barely has the energy to engage us. Maybe she's a refugee. Maybe she was once a prominent member of the society, though, with the jewelry that she has. Another image I was looking at and really liked the idea of the sacrifice of Isaac. This one is by Caravaggio. There's a number of artists that depict this story in different ways, but that horror of the idea of having to slay someone that you love most in the world, and the willingness to do it, is a crazy kind of chaotic thought to me. And also I was looking at Bosch, Heralding of Hell, totally different kind of chaos. And then this is my painting at midnight, referencing the Isaac piece in a different perspective, but this light is almost emanating from the figure tied to a rock, and maybe this is a father, some sort of veteran, or even a jealous lover. There's chaos in the background and this sort of fog of ash and smoke. There's a serpent emerging at the bottom of the composition from the puddle. Traditionally, a lot of people associate that with Satan, but also it can be seen as a creative force in a way, how snakes shed their skin, sort of like a renewal, transcendent energy. Is this a punishment, sacrificial rite, or just chaos without reason? Obviously, the character is hesitant to do what he's doing as he's covering the face of the figure. But again, I like to create these where you can read into it different interpretations, depending on your own background or, ideas around things. This is Messenger. This painting we're witness to this intimate moment of a wounded sailor or a soldier, maybe he could be you or I, There's these ships in the background that are either burning from war or they've crashed into each other with this storm. Our own ship seems unstable. He holds this bird with a note tied to its foot, and it's unclear whether he's just received this or if it's a message he's trying to send out. His other hand covers his chest, and we see this expression of sort of this cathartic expression of acceptance of whatever fate has happened, is happening now, or is about to happen. And this painting won the Worldwide Kitsch Competition, which is a competition for classical painting and with an emphasis within storytelling specifically. And so I was invited to go on the Cave of Appelli's podcast in Norway and give a talk about the work and my working process and how I make a painting. It's a long form sort of conversation. If you want to look them up, they interview artists, they interview poets, they interview screenwriters, they interview composers, really any kind of creative type. And they, when I was there, they filmed me making a self-portrait. You could also find that on YouTube if you're interested in seeing my working process. A lot of you that were here today, you saw this firsthand in the demo in the workshop. Some other images. But luckily, I was able to get that interview to coincide with a residency that I was going to have in Norway as well with Odd Nerdrum. A classical figurative painter, storyteller. This is the studio I stayed in with this sort of classical architecture surrounded by these Greek sculptures on this farm just secluded away at the southeast coast of Norway. This is where I would sleep, and this is the view we had. There was a lot of really nice trails to walk, and it was sort of a magical place. I was there for a little over 2 months, but it felt more like 6 months because Norway in the summer, time moves differently. The sun didn't set until after midnight, and then it would be up sometimes as early as 3 a.m., so it was really long days. And I was sort of just away from the hustle and bustle of everyday life, and I had nothing to do but paint and concentrate on my craft. And so it really, it was kind of magical, and I feel like I got a lot more painting done in 2 months than maybe I did in 2 years. And although I was kind of secluded away, I also was exposed to new perspectives and ideas because the other students there were from all around the world. I met people from Austria, Italy, Chile, Mexico, and of course some Norwegians. It was a nice sort of tight group. We would paint together, we would model for each other, we'd have discussions. We had critique night where we would get together with wine, coffee, or tea and just give each other feedback and criticism on our work to try to help improve. But my favorite part probably was the morning meetings we would have every day before we would go to work in Odd's studio, and he would come up and present the group with some kind of philosophical question, and we would sort of, there's not really a right or wrong answer, but we would have a discussion. And then he may ask us if we have anything to bring before the group, or we may just put down a bunch of books and compare different painters and what qualities are working well with them and how we can maybe channel that in our own work. If you haven't been to a residency, or if you're thinking about it, or study abroad, I really suggest go, because it can be life-changing, and you make a lot of connections with people, relationships, friendships that follow you your whole life. But it was a Renaissance workshop, so there was work to be done. I had the chance to transfer one of Odd's sketches to a painting he was getting ready to start. We would sometimes build stretchers, stretch canvases. We would mix up the grounds for the canvases. In a way, we were learning by doing these steps. And then this is the master at work. Odd is in his 80s now, and he works from dusk till dawn. He outworks all of us, and it's a great inspiration to, want to improve and strive every day and just become better at your craft. And then more recently, I'm becoming interested in symbolism and symbols in paintings. So I was looking at different books, the Symbols and Allegories in Art, where it'll show these different objects and talk about how they're in different paintings and what they represent, different meanings. But also in the idea of superstitions and traditions and how those form are very interesting to me. I watched this documentary, Signs, Cures, and Witchery. I think it was filmed in the early 90s, but it examined a lot of elderly people at the time from Appalachia and the rural South, and stories they would tell about their experiences growing up that maybe would even talk about witchcraft and different kind of superstitions. And that made me think of some of the stories I've heard from my own family. My dad, whenever he was a kid, my great-grandfather tied a knot in a string and rubbed it on my dad's wart and buried it, and he told him that as the string rotted, so would his wart. So that's fascinating to me to hear stuff like that and think about how those kind of superstitions maybe develop. And probably this is my own assumption trying to form the body of work and think about these things, is maybe these people lived in a rougher, harsher time than us, where you can't just go to the supermarket. You have to grow your food. If you fail, your crops fail, you don't eat. If you get bit by a snake or have a fever, you have to ride it out. You might not can get to a doctor. They had several children because many children didn't make it to adulthood. And so I would imagine a lot of these kind of things you might want to have, you might come up with some kind of blame to place, like a hex or a curse on the family. And so maybe these superstitions develop as a means to ward things off or protection in a way. And I'm also interested in developing my own symbolism and superstitions within this body of work that I'm starting to form. Some of the things I read about and I've looked up, like the bells, they can represent a rite of passage or spiritual purification in a way. They're in almost all major religions and the occult, but also the divining rod, I think is really interesting, a way to search out and find water if you need to dig a well, a resource that we really take for granted. It's so readily available to us. But also animals have different meanings and representations. Like the bird here, particularly the blue jay I read, is sort of a omen that encourages you to persevere even though the road ahead is difficult, which could, very well be the meaning of the painting, but it could be more utilitarian. Maybe he's got the string tied on his finger to the bird because life is rare here, or maybe the bird is a kind of alarm system for intruders. This painting is First Watch. It looks like a fortification here. The man's holding a bell, maybe in this case is to warn the others, and he's making direct contact with us with his eyes, so maybe we're that intruder into the space. In this painting, we find this lady in this fortification with these piled up cars, these fences, and in the foreground we have this dried up, shriveled plants that are dead or dying, and in one hand she has soil and she's got a bell above, maybe as a way to try to purify the soil so that it can grow again. It can support life. And in a lot of these paintings, the backgrounds and certain elements within it start to repeat. So maybe it's the same space in a different angle. Maybe it's a kind of community that's formed. It's clear that there's some kind of hardship that they're undergoing or that they're a part of. Maybe this is generations after some kind of great war. Maybe it's some kind of economic downfall or ecological disaster. I mix modern and sort of older kind of objects within the painting to sort of disorient the sense of time and space in a way. So I would go around like this stone wall here. I found this old school from the early 1800s. I had to go in the woods behind this graveyard, and I documented it, took a lot of photos of it, but also mixed in with sort of this junky kind of construction, these towers, maybe these fortifications made out of tires. And then I start to combine some of the symbols in this piece, the divining rod with the bells, to try to maybe create some kind of new meaning and keep a little bit of a mystical element to it, to where you can try to figure out what's going on, to bring your own ideas to it. And the work's very early on, and I'm still exploring this. I don't know where it's going to go. I'm very excited to see where it will go. I'm excited to read more about mythology, symbols, and different sort of takes on that. And yeah, we'll see where that goes. And thank you so much. Appreciate you coming. If you want to, I hope to see some of y'all at the exhibition. If you want to know more about me and my work, if you've got Instagram, there's my handle there. Feel free to look me up and see some of my paintings. And yeah, thank you.
Always no time for questions.
Yeah, if you have some questions, I'll do my best to answer. Yes?
Why is scale so important? Like, why are these so large? Like, why can't they be smaller?
That's a good question. The answer to that is, I want it to feel like a lived space and environment, to where the viewer could walk into the painting, to be a part of it. Maybe you're looking through a window, maybe you're in this space with the figures. So whenever some of them make direct eye contact with you, it's almost like they're confronting you. And I think scale really helps push that. Yep.
There's a whole lot of destruction in the background and like dilapidation. Why do you find it important to find symbolism in the maybe like darker themes of where the world would go, instead of
Well, you
I don't
know,
want to say happier, but like where do you find that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that body works pretty early on, so I may have some go the other way as well. But even in the ones with destruction, I wanted to have a sense that there's at least a glimmer of hope. Like with these symbols that I'm starting to use, maybe these people are starting to rebuild that destruction. You know, there are some dilapidated areas, but then there's some things that are built and they're sort of, you know, coming from the ground up and maybe reestablishing, you know. And it may also be a kind of warning to us, you know, and this is sort of this alternate universe, but if we keep going the way we are going, perhaps we're looking at a vision of our future. So in a way, maybe it's a warning or a way to, you know, strive and try to shake us awake to do better. Yep.
Thank you for the very interesting, fun, good talk.
Thank you.
I'm really interested in your process. The earlier paintings you showed us, you talked about like making these elaborate sets that you would then paint. So in some of these later ones where they seem to be more, you know, like fictional, that component, how much of it is real and how much of it is?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's sort of a combination, because I will set up these elaborate places that I have to kind of take apart, or I'll go find a construction site and photograph, sneak in whenever I'm not supposed to be there, and light things and try to document stuff. And then I'll take a mixture of things that I've put together and things that I've went and found and documented, and I will collage it together in Photoshop sometimes and try to change the lighting to make it into a specific place. So in a way, I'm digitally creating the sets in that way. Yep.
How many people in your paintings are actually like real models?
Most of them, at least with the newer work. The stuff I started out with was just me coming up with characters, using myself as a reference. But the later paintings, they're usually people I know, friends that you know, want to be in my work, or family members. Really, you know, if you're an artist, your family will know you have to do their duty. Yeah, those last two, that was my mother and father-in-law.
important to your paintings. Can you elaborate on that, or?
Well, yeah, you know, different brush strokes maybe can communicate different, you know, something bigger, more rougher, scrape through. Sometimes a brush stroke can be, a stroke or a mark can be made with sandpaper or a palette knife as well. And maybe it can help communicate movement or action, whereas another part might be more delicate and soft and, you know, sort of communicate something different. And so I like to have a variety of that stuff happen, and depending on what the story is and if it helps or enhance something that I want to communicate. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I have another question. So, how do you decide on the nudity in paintings? Is it more of like a callback to the Renaissance style of showing full figures, or is it part of the symbolism in these new works that you're trying to convey something different with?
Well, most of the newer work doesn't have nudity in it, but like for instance, like with the work I'm making now, if there would be some nudity, there would have to be a reason. Like the image up now, the nude figure there, that was a commission. So sometimes you got to do what you got to do to pay the bills, so to speak. That's a good question. All right. Yep.
You mentioned that you were interested in looking into symbolism a little bit more. Were you talking more so about more classical symbols, or are we talking more modern interpretations of those symbols?
Both. I'm interested in, really what I'm interested in is looking at classical symbols, looking at more modern symbols, and also trying to take some of this stuff together and create my own symbols, you know, through kind of looking at how that works.
And would you at all be interested into looking into more niche symbolism, such as very local or symbolism that isn't really touched upon in a lot of literature?
Oh, that would be great. Do you have some suggestions for me?
I think a common one around the Midwest is cardinals being symbols of
Pass away loved one?
Here in Kansas, I don't know how many people even still know this one. A rattlesnake on a fence used to be a very common way to say like call on for rain.
Oh, okay.
But
I haven't heard that one.
That kind of died off as soon as barbed wire was invented, because
Yeah.
the whole point of it was like because of rigor mortis, the snake would curl up and fall off the fence. But now with barbed wire, you didn't really have those.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Any more questions? Well, thank you all, and I really enjoyed my time here in the demo today, the workshop, and the talk, and I hope to talk with you guys more at the opening. Thank you.
To support the ESU Art Forum program, please visit emporia.edu/art. Click on the Events tab, scroll down to the Art Forum link and click. Then scroll down to the Support Art Forum button and click. Finally, choose your donation level and click on the Continue button to complete the process. We appreciate your support.